Hello and welcome. I hope you're well. Today's exciting episode is me making this gorgeous Chanel style tweed into a jacket. So let's do this. Oh, and the poor mannequin wrapped up in the Christmas tree tweed still hasn't escaped. Poor thing.
It's perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Perfect jacket.
I wasn't going to use this green tweed, green, yellow and blue tweed. But then when it came down to it, I just couldn't bear the thought of leaving it in the storage boxes for another year without making it. Because, I've kind of got all the months blocked out, colour blocked this year, and I won't get around to green again until probably March next year. So long story short, I cut out this piece. There's only a tiny bit left, but I will keep it because I might make a mini handbag or something. So because it's such a gorgeous tweed. So yeah, I'm going to keep that, even though it's a teeny tiny amount. So, or maybe one day I'll make a patchwork jacket. I don't know. I will keep it just in case. So these are my bits, and here I've carefully taken off my pattern pieces and stacked them all in order. So we've got the sleeves at the bottom, then the lining bits, then all the torso bits in order. So here we go. I've removed the ones I'm not doing immediately, so the lining ones are to the side. And it is such a beautiful tweed. So we'll set them aside, and I also cut out all the pattern pieces again with the structural out of the structural fabric. I use netting for my structural layer, but some people use buckram or horsehair canvas. I just think, well, netting is just less gross because it's, not glue made out of rabbit's bones or, horsehair canvas, which is made out of horsetails. So each their own. Anyway, so I've got my structural layer all done and they're all in order. So then I carefully put over the top a piece of the outer fabric, a tweed for each. And then I'll go along and I'll just make sure they're exactly lined up. And then I'll pin the two layers together before pinning the whole jacket together in the way that I'm going to machine sew the long seams. It does take a while, but you get there eventually. This is me halfway through, so I've done one side and I'm up to the back bit, and there we go. So the whole thing is pinned together, and I've just got to do the sleeves now. So yeah, I lay down the biggest piece of the lining, the structural layer, then the tweed of the underarm, and then the structural layer of that, pin them all together. Then I sewed them, and then you just have to check that there's no puckers or, that everything's been sewn, all the long seams have been done perfectly. And seriously, I love this tweed. It is so pretty. And so everything's fine. So the next thing you do is pin the top front and the top back together, and you stitch them down, and that creates the shoulders. So now we are ready to hand stitch the seam allowance on every single seam. So the first step to doing that is pin it down, and then it's easier to hand sew that way. So I will go and do that, and I won't make you watch because it's super boring, but it just gives you the most beautiful finish if you do it by hand. So I shall go and I'll watch TV or something while I'm doing that. I actually ended up listening to an audiobook of Emma, and I just find it so difficult to listen to an audiobook if I've actually physically read the book dozens of times, because their reading of it is just so different to my understanding of it. But obviously each time you read a book it's different. But anyhow, so this is me going through the long drawn out process. So first you hand stitch down the seam allowance, and once that's done, then you have to pin the structural layer to the tweed, and then I just pin to show where my stitch lines are, and then I stitch them. If your tweed is heavier, then obviously you'll need more stitching lines to keep the two layers together, but this is a summer weight tweed, so yeah, and it's quite a small pattern, so yeah, I just do a couple of lines per panel, and then once all that stitching is done, it's time to turn up the cuffs and hand stitch them down. And once that was done, I also did the body of the jacket, just turned up the hem, measured it, pinned it up, and then went along and carefully hand stitched that down. So now it's all ready and everything is hand stitched. Well, the next thing is to do the sleeves. And that, of course, involves yet more hand stitching. But before we do that, I have to see, here it is, so pretty. The next step is to reinforce the shoulders a little. So I've cut out just some spare netting and I've cut it into, there's 2 strips, and 2 for the left, 2 for the right. And then I just put the jacket inside out, the bodice of the jacket inside out on a mannequin, and pin these to it. Good Lord, I made that first part of the jacket so long ago. Anyway, I finally got it on the mannequin, but I do the arm reinforcing slightly differently now. It's smoother if you do one whole piece around the whole of the neckline rather than one on each side. So that's what I've done. It is more difficult, and nowadays when I make a jacket, I don't sew the side up. I just make both fronts and the back as separate sort of pieces of a shell. Then I lay over the shoulder reinforcement, and then I hand stitch that into place. You sort of pin it around all the stress points, then you hand stitch the back, hand stitch the front, and then you sort of turn it to the side and you do hand stitching around the shoulder in a couple of rows there. And that's how I do it now. So if you haven't started a jacket yet, definitely consider this way. It is a little daunting leaving the sides undone because tweed sort of has a tendency to unravel. So there is that, but you can just hand stitch the sides if your tweed is one of those ones that just falls apart as soon as you touch it. Anywho, back to this jacket. So I've hand stitched the reinforcement down and it's looking good. I've also sort of just trimmed bits around the edge so that the seam allowance won't be too bulky when I do attach the sleeves or do the neckline. So now that this is done, the neckline is the next thing to do, and I just machine sewed a line to tell me where the exact neckline was. Then I went around and trimmed down the seam allowance a little. Then I clipped the curve so that it would fold under really nicely, and then I pinned it into place. Then I hand stitch it twice. And this just allows me to do the whole of the outer jacket, then do the beading, then do the whole of the lining. And that's why I'm finishing the neckline now instead of right at the end, like your instructions probably tell you to. I always get distracted at this point thinking about what the beading should be. So I had these bow beads and I was going to use them on the aqua and silver jacket. Ooh, I was going to get the jacket out, but you can actually see the beading on this jacket. So those are the aqua ones, but I also have I just have to show you this footage again. Look, you can see the beads. I had such a devil of a time trying to photograph it so you could actually see the clear beads. Yeah, so I ended up using clear beads on that one. So I still haven't used bow beads on anything. They just look really difficult to work with. And I thought the colours might match on this. But now that I'm looking at the footage, I feel like they make this very, very bright, very cheerful, light tweed look a bit greyish, just because the plastic is a different intensity than the tweed. So I don't know, maybe. But you can't start beading until you've actually made the jacket. So I cleared them away. I did the hand stitching around the neckline and it is ready to go. So now all I have to do to finish the outer jacket is set these sleeves. So you pin them into place, then you machine sew them, then you do all the hand stitching. So yeah, stop procrastinating, just do it. Okay, I'm talking to myself here. The problem with tweed is that, well, if you're making a jacket for the first time, of course you do the mock-up in cotton first and you get your practice in there. But I've done my mock-up for this jacket years ago, and I've still sort of used the same measurements and same alterations. So yeah, each time I'm like, oh, with tweed you kind of only get one go. I guess you can sort of baste them into your sleeves into place, pin them, then hand sew it, and then put it on and check it, and then once you're ready you can machine sew it. But I mean, you don't have to machine sew it, you can just hand sew it and then hand sew it again to make it more secure. And once you've done the seam line, then you clip the curves under the arm, and then you push all the seam allowance back into the sleeves, and then you pin the seam allowance into the sleeves. This is obviously a different jacket, but it allows you to see what I'm talking about. Pin it in there, and then I hand stitch from the outside once, and once that's done, I turn it inside and I hand stitch just the ends into place. Everything's going to be covered by the silk lining anyway, but I just like to have it extra secure. A lot of people complain that when they make a jacket, they never actually do any of that hand stitching, and they say that their sleeves come apart. I've never experienced sleeves coming off, and I do a lot of hand finishing, so perhaps that has something to do with it. And yeah, there we go, the finished jacket. I love this tweed. I just think it's so delightful. I'm still not entirely sure how I'm going to bead it, whether I'm going to put those bow beads on it or glass pearls or a mix of different sort of fluoro and bright coloured ones. But yeah, this is it from the side. It's just so lovely. It only has one layer of netting as the structural layer, so I can't do beads that are too heavy, but I can add a reasonable amount of beading embellishment on there. So I'm just not sure what. It's just so lovely. I've got a fear of messing up this one. So yeah, the threads in the background are good for colours. So I'm not sure whether you can tell, but the navy blue, the dark blue in this, it's got metallic twinge to it. I'm tempted to do dark blue, sort of dark royal blue beading, or yeah, there's just so many possibilities because there's so many different greens in there. Oh, I've got these ones. I actually made this bead mix for a different jacket, a Chanel tweed that I have in vanilla and fluoro colours that sort of picks up all those colours in there. But I'm thinking maybe it would look good with this one. So I actually lay it on the bench and put them together so you can see them. But this is what it looks like just with a fluoro ribbon. It's very pretty. I'm so in love with this tweed, and I do look forward to beading it, but yeah, fear of messing up. So I'm not sure. I do think the royal blue plastic beads would look adorable on it, but this fluoro mix of beads, it's unusual, but I don't know. I do want each of my jackets to be interesting and unique. And these shank beads, they're fluoro green with sort of a rose gold, those strawberry ones, and they are just hilarious. They only had a few hundred of them. And then I've got these tiny little tulips, and those yellow and white ones with the black dots, they're supposed to be apples or nashies, nashi pears. And yeah, so I'm tempted, I'd just do those little delicate, expensive beads around the neckline, of course, and use the other beads in the body of the piece. I also have these paler ones, and I wasn't sure whether they mix, but they really do go with that mustardy pale yellow in the tweed. So yeah, perhaps I'll use this mix. I'm not sure. It was intended for a different jacket, but yeah, the Chanel tweed, I'm kind of leaning towards pearls, glass pearls at the moment. So I don't know. I tend to play musical chairs with the bead mixes for each of these jackets. So yeah, I'm not sure. This is a really good mix for these beads. Oh, and there's also a few of those plastic beads with the gold it's sort of put over the top, and it sinks into the engraved bits. Pretty awesome. Anyway, I've got the jar of beads over under my Christmas tree tweed. And oh, these are the pearls. I think I might have shown them to you in a previous video. I've also got those mint green ones. So the options are endless. Anyway, that is it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've been inspired to make a tweed jacket, a unique tweed jacket for yourself of your very own. And yeah, thanks again for watching. Happy sewing.